Everybody, good morning. Is it still morning? Still morning. Mark Morales, Program Manager at Northside ICH. Nice to see you all again. So last year, so 2024, Northside ICH started a Learning Institute. And the very first one that we did, I think many of you are here, was on anti-racism. And we had a series of speakers present on that topic. Met in person a few times, and then the rest of the times we were doing presentations online. The second Learning Institute that we did was the Youth Leadership Institute, and that was primarily with middle school age youth, a couple high schoolers from the North Sound region, from San Juan Islands, some kids from Everett, some kids from Mount Vernon, and we were meeting on a weekly basis and had different speakers speak on different topics that were of interest to the youth that were attending those. And so for a few of the sessions, we actually met at Triumph Teen Center. They let us use their facility to meet up. And the final celebration was also at Triumph. We had a meal with the kids that evening. It was really cool to see a bunch of the parents show up for the last session, and we talked about many different things during those 7 sessions. Some of the presentations were on like what is the role of arts in leadership? How can kids use art as a way to expand their leadership? What are ways that kids can get involved in their local government was a different topic that we also did for one of those weeks. If there's something in your community or in your school, let's say student government or your city council, what are ways that you can use those avenues to be able to participate and enact the change that you want? So the youth are given an opportunity to know what those systems were like and what was like ways for them to get involved. We also looked at sports. So we talked about sports figures, whether that be, Colin Kaepernick as an example, or a different sports figure that were using their platform to enact change, and how could, as a youth, how could you do that with sports if you played sports, and what are like examples that you could take from people that you looked up as a youth that were professionals. And so we had, I want to say about maybe like, I gotta go look at the numbers, but it was around maybe like 10 kids that were consistently attending. Initially, the goal was to have, the goal was to have, I want to say youth between 16 to 24. I think was kind of like sort of the ideal when we first started, but we found that it was difficult to get youth that were in their early 20s. I think that was kind of the segment of the population that was really hard for us to recruit, and so we ended up mostly with youth that were sort of the 12 to 17 age range, which was really great because we were really excited to be part of the program. The youth that were a little older, that the intended youth that when I was kind of trying to formulate who we were going to recruit were a little harder. So I think in the future, as we think about moving forward, how we recruit youth that are a little older, college age. I think it's something that I've been thinking about how to be more effective in recruiting that age population. How much time do I have? 5 more minutes. So I have 5 more minutes. Maybe I can share a little bit of some of the stuff that I heard from the youth in one of the presentations. So I ended up being one of the presenters for one of the sessions, and for that session, and it's kind of a good segue to when I do the poetry. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to the youth, because I would say the majority of the youth that we had in the program were youth of color. It's probably like 90% of the youth, and a lot of the youth that we had, I would say the majority of those youth of color were Latino youth. And so, in one of the presentations that I did was trying to get them to think about both colonization and imperialism, and how we ended up arriving here in the Pacific Northwest, and how we ended up on coastalist territory, right? So I wanted them to think about critically about how we ended up here, and what are the things that drove us to leave our homelands and come here, right? So I think that was a presentation that resonated with a lot of kids, because a lot of the kids were, second, third generation, and they never really thought about what was the reason behind their parents or their grandparents making their journey up into the Pacific Northwest. And so that was a good presentation. We had a youth particularly that I kind of keep thinking about. He had been pushed out of school. I use the term pushed out because I think the term that's often used is dropped out of school, so it kind of puts the responsibility on the kid that you dropped out. And so I try to say, I usually say it pushed out because the school didn't have the resources to keep him in school. And so this boy, 16, 17-year-old boy, who had been out of school for a couple years, was really excited to be in that and attend that day, because I think he really felt connected to the topic that we were discussing, and it made him really think about how he ended up in the Pacific Northwest, and so it was a really cool opportunity, and we hope to continue to do that, to host those leadership institutes. We will have another one coming up here in the next couple months. That will be focused on BIPOC leaders. So where the first one was open to everybody to learn topics of anti-racism, this one was for youth. The next one will be for BIPOC leaders and how to engage. And so once we have more details, we will send those details out for folks that they want to be participants. And I had sent out a personal email to everybody that that participated, and we've gotten really good feedback. But maybe in the last 2 minutes. If anybody wants to ask a question about specifically the Youth Leadership Institute, I'm happy to answer those.
So you mentioned the trouble or the issue with getting early 20-year-olds to join the Youth Leadership Institute, and I was wondering, have you thought about creating something specific to emerging adulthood, which that typically is the age range of, where it's we are technically not adults but still legally adults and able to do adult things but also not, and have you thought about more focusing on that developmental stage as as a specific, rather than lumping them in with the more 13-year-olds and emerging teenagers rather?
So I'd say that's a really good point, and I really appreciate the suggestion, and it's something that definitely needs to learn from, and look at that as a particular strategy to engage people in that particular age demographic. Great idea. Any other questions? Question over here.
Yeah, I just had a consideration as you were talking, because similarly with that age group, when I was at the community college, I was part of Phi Theta Kappa International Honor Society, and one of their hallmarks is leadership. And I know oftentimes students were looking for various opportunities to get involved, and just, if you hadn't made that connection yet, I'd love to chat with you more about getting those students involved.
Yeah, I would love to have PTK involved, and I'm also a PTK alumni, so let's connect. Yeah, there you go. Any final questions, and then we'll move on to the next section. Then we'll move on to the next section, and then we can eat. Not yet? Oh, no eating yet. I guess I'm hungry. Okay, any other questions? Over here.
Yo necesito la traducción. Bueno. No es exactamente una pregunta, solo quería comentar, cuando nos hicieron a nosotros la invitación en el condado de San Juan Isla, yo no sé si hubo participantes de Friday Harbor o de Orca, nosotros somos de López, pero lo que yo quería saber, si a lo mejor pudieran considerar otro tipo de horarios para hacerlo, porque, no sé si es mucho, si quieres traducir.
I don't know if when they did the invitation, they sent it to San Juan Island or Orcas. And if that was the case, I would like to ask if there could be like a different schedule.
Okay. La razón es porque nosotros lo hemos visto como comunidad que no podemos competir con los deportes y nuestra localidad es bien pequeña y los jóvenes solo tienen deportes como por 2 meses o 3 meses, por decir fútbol, 2 meses, 3 meses básquetbol. Entonces, a diferencia de Orcas y Friday Harbor, ellos tienen deporte todo el año y nuestros jóvenes no. Entonces, como que no pudimos competir con eso y nuestros jóvenes sí tenían muchas como ganas de participar pues en este proyecto, pero realmente el horario no se prestaba.
As a community, I feel that we had a disadvantage because we couldn't participate because the schedule wasn't aligned with our needs. Our youth are eager to participate, but they only have sports like 2 months, and there's only have like basketball.
Pues todos están así, básquetbol, fútbol.
It's like basketball, football, and volleyball. But like I said, our youth wanted to participate, but the opportunity wasn't. It didn't lend. The times weren't just adjusted for them.
Y, bueno, a lo mejor no sé si se pudiera hacer como en un futuro, no nomás para nuestra comunidad, a lo mejor los demás jóvenes también, no sé si eso también haya afectado en que no pudieras tener también jóvenes más grandes, los más grandes ya trabajan y a lo mejor llegan como que, no sé, pudiera ser una idea. Pero en el caso de nosotros, a lo mejor si hubiera sido un poco más tarde cuando ellos ya hubieran salido del partido o en fines de semana, bueno, no sé si funcionaría o no.
And in the future, for that range group that you're trying to captivate, like the over 20s, perhaps all these kids already have jobs and stuff. And for us, it was like after their own sport things that they have going on, or after work, or even weekends, that will be something that might work to attract that age group.
Y bueno, no es como, dijéramos, un tipo de sugerencia o como un punto que a lo mejor como pudieran tener en cuenta, pues, si pudiera servir. ¿Verdad? Gracias por su ayuda.
And I don't know, it's just a point, something that I wanted, it's my opinion, but thanks for your help.
Gracias. Okay, so can we move on to so we'll give you context around this idea of this poetry. So I think some of you know that I'm a monastic dancer. I think many of you know me in this role, but when I was about 16 years old, I started dancing, and so I've been dancing for about 20 years now. And every year we have our Day of the Dead event at Whatcom Community College, and we've been doing that for maybe like 13 years. I think it was like 22. Well, it was about 22 when I started that event there. 13, 14 years, and we danced there every year, beginning of November. And so for those of you that know about Day of the Dead or Dia de los Muertos, it's a celebration that's hosted throughout Mexico and Central America since time immemorial, for thousands of years. And so we dance at Whatcom. We've been doing that for a long time. And so Liz happened to be in attendance this last, just a couple months ago, 3-4 months, and whenever that was in November. And so we host our ceremony there at Whatcom, and the public is able to come and witness our ceremony. And so for those of you that are dancers, you know that when you're in the spirit, the words, you're not really thinking about what you're going to say. The words just come out, right? And so I started sharing a poem that is a very ancient poem. That is from our Mexica, which are known as the Aztecs, the Mexica our ancestors. It talks about our temporality and how we're very temporal on earth, and it is our responsibility to be good ancestors for future generations, right? Because we only have a certain amount of time, and we don't really know how long that time's going to be, right? And so yeah, I just started, it was kind of out of the fly. I'm just dancing, and then I stopped and I started, addressing the audience. And the poem is basically says not forever on earth, right? It's sort of the way that the poem starts. And the poem's there. I think some of you can read it. It's kind of hard for me to read it from here. But this poem, I just love how this is kind of tying, but when the Spanish colonized us and they left, the Europeans that first came to this hemisphere went to the Caribbean and then they went to Mexico, right? So they, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and then, then they went to Mexico. And so when our ancestors, particularly our ancestors from, what is today Mexico City, they were forced to go to the new Catholic schools with the friars, right? And so when they went to the Catholic schools, they were taught how to speak Spanish, how to be Catholics, and we were taught the subjects of Europe, basically, right? But the children that were taken into the schools because they learned how to speak Spanish, they were also taught how to read and write, right? And so there was a for the kids that were taught how to read and write, their elders and their teachers found a new way for us to be able to preserve our culture with this new thing that was introduced called writing, right? Where we've had oral traditions that were passed down, and so now they realized that they could, because our culture was being banned, they realized that they could pass down our traditions by writing what they were learning from the elders and then writing it at school, right? And so this particular poem is from Nezahualcóyotl, who was one of our speakers, or what are people call chiefs, right? And this poem is actually from somewhere around in the 1400s, because he lived in basically 1402, I think, to like 1480. So this is about a 600-year-old poem that was preserved in writing, and you can find. So this is a translation, an English translation of this. But the original poem was written in Nahuatl, and then written in Spanish, and then you can find it in English. But I know enough of it, so I don't really have to read it. But it basically says, "Not forever on earth, only a brief instant here." Right? Not forever on earth, only a brief instant here. Even feathers rip, even gold breaks. Not forever on earth, only a brief instant here. Right? And it's a reminder to us of how we're not going to be here forever, right? So how can we be of service to our communities, knowing that we're not going to be around for forever, because we too will go back to the earth and become ancestors, right? So I think it's a good reminder for us as to be of service to each other, because we want people in future generations to remember us in a good way, right? And so I'm honored to be here with you all, and I thank you to our Native sisters earlier that talked and presented, because I really connected with it, and so it's a good teaching for me to learn from you all, and it's a good opportunity for us to reflect on that and what is the work that we want to do together in these turbulent times, and how can we all be good ancestors for people that will come long after us, right? When this is written, in the 1400s, long before colonization, Nezahualcóyotl was reminding us that we're not going to be here on earth forever, right? And with that, I want to thank you all,